Board members, if you would like to come on camera, I would welcome you to do that. My name is Dawn Moutner. She, her, and A are my pronouns. Did I just say February? It's March. No, it's February, right? Forgive me. Board members, if you're able to come on camera, please feel free to do that. I'll go ahead and take roll. Siobhan Martin, are you with us?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning. Greg Clauser.
Good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Cheeky Flowers, are you with us this morning? Maybe we'll give Cheeky another moment. Andrea Fultz, are you with us?
I am present.
Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning.
Kimberly Hendricks.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean Parkman.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Emily Wong. Not hearing Emily yet. Rep Rob Nose, are you with us this morning? Session's busy. Chicky, have you had a chance to join us? Maybe not yet. And Emily. Also not yet. However, it looks like we do have quorum. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Before we begin, I'll acknowledge the fullness of our agenda and the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson and his tremendous impact as a leader of the civil rights movement. We grieve his passing alongside all the families and communities that benefit from the work of civil rights and equity. And I'll go back and check to see if Cheeky Flowers has been able to join. Or Emily Wong.
Good morning, Dawn and the rest of the board. I am here, Cheeky Flowers, available by phone and video at this time. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Cheeky. Good morning. Emily?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, I've been here, but I had my microphone down on mute, so couldn't hear you talking. So anyway, I have my microphone on now.
Perfect. Just in time. I'd like to acknowledge too that today marks the Lunar New Year, the year of the fire horse. And Emily, I wanted to ask if you would speak briefly to that for the benefit of the board and attendees.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dawn. Yes, happy Lunar New Year of the Fire Horse, everyone. And so, yeah, I know we've got a full agenda, so I won't say a lot, but for those who may not be familiar, the Lunar New Year, it's based on the moon calendar, so it's a different date every year. It's based on the moon. And so this year is February 17th is the first day. It marks a time of renewal and spring coming, a time of renewal, gratitude, hope, across many different Asian groups. And then also Pacific Islanders have something similar. It's not called the Lunar New Year, but also kind of the welcoming of spring. And as the representative of the largest union in Oregon, SEIU 503, I'm also the co-chair of the Asian Desi Pacific Islander Caucus and invite members to our March 1st celebration of both the Lunar New Year, which, you know, is shared with like Chinese communities, Vietnamese communities, and then also Chamoran Week. And so that is with our Pacific Islander community. And so then you'll learn even more about the significance of this time. And as I had shared at the last PEB board meeting, this is really significant year because from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, because it is the turning point year of a 60-year cycle. So this year marks that turning point. And then just to close, this year of the horse represents hard work, bravery, and resilience. And I think that really marks what we in Oregon have been doing through the PEB board and all of our partners, especially from an equity perspective too. So thank you. Thanks, Dawn, for that moment.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate the different perspectives on cycles and the opportunities to examine our work through the lens of such traditions. So today we have an enormous agenda with some good thinking, and I look forward to the thought partnership with those in the room. Board members, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
This is Siobhan Martin. I have reviewed the minutes and I will make a motion to accept them as written.
This is Greg Clauser. I can second that. Sorry, I can second that.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, Greg. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. And we will move to our next agenda item, which is to review the RFP. Mercer team, staff, who's taking the lead? Good morning.
Morning, Dawn. This is Ruby. I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Good morning, Ruby. Go ahead.
Good morning. I will be doing the introduction of the RFP and the today's presentation. So Rose, if you could move to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We just want to remind all those that are attending that this presentation is really for the board and to have discussions between staff, Mercer, and board members. We want to ensure the integrity of the RFP process, and so we're asking other attendees that are not board members to please refrain from adding commentary or putting information in the chat for clarification. And so thank you in advance for your cooperation on this. If you could go to the next slide, thank you. So today's objective is to review the development of the RFP questions and scoring, level set on accomplishments so far and where we are at today. We're going to review the finalist selection process along with the finalist selection process with scores. And we're going to also discuss the finalist interviews and the overview. We will be asking board members for action during today's presentation. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or interject. We really want to have this to be a conversation and really have that engagement with board members. So with that, I will let the Mercer team take it away. Thank you.
Hey, Ruby, I can kick us off. Good morning, board members. And so I'll walk us through these next few slides here and talk about how we develop the RFP questions and talk about our scoring methodology for assessing these written proposals. This is information that will be somewhat of a refresher for board members. But you know, this has been a long road and it's a complicated process. And so doing this sort of level setting at the outset before we look at the scores, we thought would be useful and a good use of our time. And so this slide here shows PEB's key goals related to this RFP. And this is like I said, this has been a long project. We started this topic back in November of 2023. And at that time, I think it was during the retreat, the board identified key components of an ideal health partner. And we're trying to capture those components here and the key goals related to this RFP. As we progressed through 2024, we discussed each of these topics individually, trying to understand what an ideal partner would look like related to specific services that a health plan can do and specific functions, and capturing that and writing position statements for each of these goal areas. And so after we had done a lot of that groundwork, we spent most of 2025 actually writing the RFP. We released the RFP in late 2025. Fast forward now to February, we're in receipt of the proposals. We've scored the written proposals, and now we're here to show you those scores and talk with you all today, board members. And so one of the key activities that the core RFP team did was to try to translate these core values into a scoring rubric. So that we could have a sort of usable format to assess the written proposals. And so if we want to jump to the next slide, please. This slide shows the scoring rubrics for both the medical questionnaire as well as the pharmacy questionnaire. So again, these are the written proposals of the RFP. And so these tables show how we've weighted the various sections within the medical questionnaire, within the pharmacy questionnaire. Furthermore, sort of stepping back, I guess, that the medical questionnaire has an 80% weighting attached to it. And the pharmacy questionnaire has 20% of the potential points awarded for a written proposal attached to it. And so that 80-20 split was intentional. That roughly matches the cost distribution for PEB's plan rates, with 80% of costs associated with medical, 20% related to pharmacy. And so you can see each of these different sort of function areas that we have in these colored rows here, as well as their corresponding weighting within the medical and pharmacy questionnaires. There are a couple of board priorities that don't have their own row. And so we've called those out in that blue box. And that was intentional. Things like behavioral health and health equity, they really span some of these other categories. They're not a distinct category so much as a topic that's interwoven throughout these other categories. And so while they don't have their own row, they are significant portions of both questionnaires. And so health equity and behavioral health, I mentioned advocacy as well. Those are interwoven throughout each of these other functional areas. I'm going to pause and see. I don't see any raised hands, so I will proceed, but I will look out for raised hands if anyone has any questions. I think we can probably jump to the next slide. Thank you, Emily. And so this slide starts to speak to the structure of the RFP. And a useful way to think about the structure is to think about this big RFP containing a few mini RFPs within it. And so this splits out two of those sort of air quote mini RFPs, one being the statewide PPO, the other being the regional CCM plans. And so starting with the statewide PPO, this is similar to the Providence statewide plan that's in place today. Those bidders who submitted a proposal for the statewide PPO had to do so on a self-funded basis only. Those proposers could submit for both medical and pharmacy, or they could submit medical only. And up to one winner will be selected for the statewide PPO. We do have an asterisk there for apparent successful proposers in case you hear that term today, ASP. That's sort of procurement speak for the winning bidder. And so switching gears, thinking about the regional CCM, because this was sort of a separate mini RFP, it did have some of its own questions. There is some overlap in terms of questions that applied to both statewide and regional, but there are some specific questions for regional. There are some different requirements associated with regional. For example, bidders could choose their funding mechanism. So we didn't force them to submit a self-funded proposal, that was a little bit more open-ended. They could submit self-funded or fully insured. Similarly, they could do a combined medical pharmacy, medical only. And when we get to looking at the scores, the board has the option with the regional CCMs to choose 0, 1, or multiple bidders in a given region. And so that's a key difference between the statewide PPO, which is really intended to award one vendor with the business. Regional CCM could potentially have more than one. So another mini RFP within the larger RFP is for pharmacy. And so if we want to jump to the next slide, please. And this it's not unusual for a large plan sponsor such as PEBB to have pharmacy carved out by a different vendor. So a pharmacy benefit manager or PBM. And so that is a part of this evaluation as well. And so bidders could submit pharmacy-only quotes or medical-only quotes or combined quotes per the previous slide. For those pharmacy-only quotes on the statewide mini RFP, those would be submitted on a self-funded basis. However, they could also be coupled with a regional medical-only quote. And so the way that we have sort of attempted to combine scores and bubble this up into a sort of cohesive summary in terms of how scores stack up is to take the highest scoring pharmacy only quote and couple it with the scores of the medical only quotes to sort of create a combined proposal that we can then compare against bidders who submitted a combined proposal where they said, well, we're submitting for pharmacy and medical. And so similarly for medical only, I think I sort of touched on this. If a vendor submitted a medical only quote, that quote will be combined with the highest scoring pharmacy only quote for comparison purposes. I think we can, Emily, jump to the next slide where we look at the regions across the state. And so this slide is really applicable to the CCM proposals, where we're getting coordinated care proposals based on specific regions. And so you can see here we've got 7 regions, 6 in Oregon, and then other. PEBB does have significant membership outside of the state of Oregon, and so that is its own region. So unlike, I think I mentioned this earlier on, unlike the statewide proposal, the board does have the option to select more than one ASP within a given region. And so proposers could submit a bid specific to one region. They could bid on multiple regions. They could bid on all regions. And so in the evaluation phase, as PEBB is moving forward, like I said, you do have the option to select more than one ASP, so winning vendor within a given region. And so if you think about, the 2 most populous regions, Portland Metro and the I-5 corridor, you can see you've got almost 75% of membership within those 2 regions. And so there could be justification for having multiple regional carriers in those regions. Perhaps in other less populated regions, that might not be the case. You might want to select just one. That's a decision that the board will need to make. However, we have structured the RP in such a way to allow you to make that decision if there's a reason that you'd like to pursue that. All right, I think we can jump to the next slide, please. And so this slide sort of steps back a little bit, and now we're looking at overall scoring. And so we talked about the written proposals. Now this is inclusive of the finalist interview. And so you can see the distribution of points there between those two. The written proposals making up 75% of total points available, with the remaining 25% attributed to the finalist interview. And so similar to the questionnaires, the finalist interview is split into medical and pharmacy with similar distribution of 80-20. I'm going to pause. I know this is information, board members, that you've seen before, but I acknowledge it's probably been a little while and this is complicated. So I want to pause and see what questions folks have. Okay. Not seeing any. All right. I think we can jump then to the next slide and talk about how we got here and some of our accomplishments thus far.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian Olson, the OEB and PEB contracts team lead, and I'm going to walk us through the next handful of slides. We're going to recap the milestones that we've hit so far, and I'm going to go off camera while I present, if you don't mind. So up to this point in the RFP project, we've reviewed all the proposals and screened them to make sure they meet all the minimum requirements and were responsive and submitted all of the required information. We engaged in some back and forth with proposers to have them clarify the responses that perhaps didn't make complete sense on the face of them the first time around. We did end up, excuse me, we did end up rejecting proposals from Regents and Aetna due to them not meeting certain specific minimum requirements. We have trained evaluators, provided proposals and scoring tools to evaluators who have now completed their evaluation assignments, and then Mercer has rolled up all of the scores and rankings for today's discussion. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll just take a snapshot of where we are today. And as you can see, the gold star indicates that today we'll be asking the board to select those proposers who will be moved forward for finalist interviews. Okay, next slide. Before we review the various scores and rankings, it's important to review the steps that the RFP says we must follow in selecting the finalists. So this slide recaps the process described in more detail in the RFP. So starting with step one, after scoring proposals, we separate them into the various like-kind categories. Step two, we then add the score of the highest scoring pharmacy-only proposal to the scores of the various medical-only proposals that were submitted. And this is done for both the statewide PPO mini RFP as well as the CCM regional mini RFP. Step three, using the updated proposal scores, we then rank the list of statewide proposals. Step four, again, using the updated rolled up scores, we then rank the list of regional proposals for each region. And then a note, we have already completed steps 1 through 4. We're not going to present all of those specific details here. However, we've included those details in the appendix for those of you who are interested. Okay, and then when we move to step 5, that's where we determine whether finalist interviews are even warranted. If no, then the options are for the board to either select a winner based on the scoring up to this point, or withdraw the RFP. If yes, we then proceed to step 6. And in step 6, we actually select all of the finalists for finalist interviews. And so this would be both for pharmacy only, the statewide PPO track, and the regional CCM track. So we select the finalists based on a few different criteria. One, we'll look at whether proposals are practically mathematically eliminated based on the scores up to this point. We'll look for natural breaks in scoring. And if there's no natural breaks in scoring, we will consider the number of finalist interviews that are practical given the time constraints that we have to interview finalists. As I've already noted, we've worked through steps 1 through 4 and have included that information in the appendix. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Mercer to walk the board through the actual selection process with the rolled up proposal scores and rankings.
Thank you, Brian.
And thank you for putting up with my voice this morning and bearing with me.
Okay, so in terms of this next section, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the various types of proposals as well as their scores, and just wanted to give you another, information about how we essentially are calculating those scores. So basically, because we have a lot of questions and there's a lot of points associated with those questions, we wanted to put everyone on a similar basis where essentially of 100% of the total points available, what percentage do they get? So that gives you a relative ranking of essentially the proposals. And the process here, as Andrew mentioned earlier, is 80% medical and 20% RX. And since each proposal had separate medical and a separate RX questions they had to respond to, we calculated total points for each of those. And then we essentially get 80% of the score for the medical and 20% for the RX to combine them into a combined medical RX. So just kind of down below, we have a little graphical or like a table showing how we essentially calculate those points and combine them together. So again, of the 100% total possible points, for example, and actually the proposal section kind of got, the labels got flipped. So the medical, let's say in that case, got 90%. And so of the possible points, 80 points, they got 90% of the 80 points, which is 72. And for the pharmacy, they got 75%, which is 15 out of 20%. And so the total of the 72 plus the 15 gets you to the 87. And so that would be essentially the combined score. The reason we had to do this again was because you had separate medical and pharmacy proposals, as well as separate, like a separate PBM. Not everyone proposed both the medical and pharmacy. And so we needed to combine them together to get to the total points. But overall, basically the highest score means they provided essentially what was scored as a better proposal. And that's how the rankings are going to be shown.
And Emery, this is Brian. I would also just note that it's probably wise not to get too fixated on just the raw rolled up score itself. Like if someone gets 80 out of 100 to this point, don't be concerned about the 80. It's more about the comparative scoring amongst the proposers.
And also, this is for the written portion. If there's finalist interviews, that would be 25% of the score. So 75% of this essential score would be added to the finalist interviews to get to the total. But as Brian mentioned, this is a comparative, and there's still a significant amount of points that could be earned via the finalist interviews. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, as Brian mentioned before, one of the things that we're asking of the board is to determine whether we should proceed to finalist interviews. There are, as mentioned before, you could select winners, or you could essentially have people go to finalist interviews, or essentially withdraw this RFP. So what Mercer and PEBB staff, we've had discussions. And we believe that we should proceed to finalist interviews. And as you'll see on the following slides, there are no proposers that completely stand out. There's not like one that's like much higher than the others to essentially go to just awarding to that one proposer. And so having finalist interviews will then allow you the board members and staff to kind of talk and listen to all these different proposers to see which one might best fit the needs of the PEBB members. So that's our recommendation. We will require board action for the board to say whether they agree to proceed to finalist interviews. But before we do that, we will go through the scores, and then we'll then ask for action from the boards. And the order that we're going to present the information, we are going to do it in terms of the RX only. So there are PBMs, and there were 3 PBMs, or pharmacy benefit managers, that proposed only to administer the pharmacy portion of the benefits. And then we'll go through the statewide PPO, and then we'll go through the regionals. Any questions before we move on? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the listing of the PBMs and the relative ranks. And so again, this is out of 20 possible points, or 20% of the overall score. We have 3 proposers there on the left: Capital RX, then OPDP or MODA, and then Med Impact. And you can see the rankings there, as well as the points awarded. So the scores are essentially 14.5% of the 20 up to 15.3. As mentioned earlier, there is a relatively close score distribution here. And Brian, right, we're recommending that that all three go potentially to a finalist interview in this
It's
case.
next slide, please.
Is that the next slide? Okay. Yeah. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so we are proposing that all three would then move over to a potential finalist interview.
And
Go for it.
I think what we would like to do is we go through the RX only proposals, then statewide, then regional. Is if the board feels comfortable based on the recommendation and the scoring, we're going to ask you to make a preliminary decision now to take preliminary board action. Then we will come back at the end to step 5, have you take formal action on proceeding to finals interviews. And then if nothing has changed after you see the whole preview and make those preliminary board decisions, then we'll just ask you to confirm at the very end. So this action right now is up to you. Do you guys feel comfortable taking preliminary board action to move all 3 finalists forward for the pharmacy only? If you don't, we will then come back to it at the very end and just have you take action then.
Okay. Sean, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I mean, so do we need a motion or is it more of a verbal consensus thing? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I would recommend following the board's normal process for formal voting.
Yeah. So, I'll make a motion that, yeah, I mean, I like that process that you're describing, that we take a, preliminary action and then we kind of review them at the end and kind of affirm, given seeing the whole picture. But it's so complex that this sort of step-by-step thing kind of makes sense to me. So I'll make a motion to accept this recommendation.
This is Kimberly. I'd second that motion.
So the motion, Sean, if I understand correctly, is to take this recommendation and move forward with finalist interviews for all 3 of the PBMs.
Yeah, so the motion is that we're making a preliminary action. So we're putting this in the decision queue. That we're going to move all 3 of these PBMs, the pharmacy into the interview phase. And then we'll review all of these preliminary decisions at the end of the meeting and kind of like, having seen the big picture, affirm. So that's the motion.
Thank you for articulating that. Kimberly, does your second stand?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Board members, all in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. We'll accept the recommendation to take a preliminary action to send all 3 of the PBM proposers to final interviews. We'll revisit that at the end before we finalize. Back to you, Mercer. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And just to make sure everyone keeps in mind, with the 3 PBMs, not everyone proposed medical plus RX. There were some, as you can see on this next slide, some proposals that were medical only. And so in that case, we combined those medical only proposals with the highest ranking pharmacy proposal, which was capital RX, to get to essentially the points that you see there on the right. So this is the list of statewide PPOs in terms of the number of proposers. There were 8. You can see that MODA did propose 2 separate statewide plans. One is essentially statewide PPOs to essentially mimic what we currently have with the statewide plan, the statewide PPO. They also had a variant which provided essentially more of a regional or like a coordinated care model statewide plan. And that one you can see it ranked 2nd and 4th. Providence proposed both the medical and RX as well as medical only. And then United Healthcare proposed two plans. One was the statewide PPO, essentially again mimicking what PEBB currently has, as well as the Surest Medical and RX, which is a variable copay plan, which is a bit of a different type of plan, where essentially you would, based on where you wanted to go, your copays for your option would vary based on essentially quality and cost of those providers. And so you can see the scores there on the right. They ranked from the MODA statewide medical only with the capital RX score, which is about 76 points out of the 100. And then down at the number 8 was Surest with 52.8. And so you can see the variance with Providence is points out of the 100, and then UHC was down about in the mid or low 50s. Okay, so keeping this in mind, if we move to the next slide. So the question again to the board is similar to that with the ARCs. Okay, should we, number one, should you award a finalist, like award winner right now, or should you go to a finalist interviews process? And if you did go to a finalist interview process, who would you recommend to be participating in the finalist interviews? Or you could, number three, withdraw the RFP. But based on the distribution that you saw on the prior slide, the recommendation to the board is that you consider moving all proposals to the finalist interviews except for the United Healthcare Associated proposals. And that's due to what may be perceived as more of a natural break in the scoring. As you know, Providence was about 72, MODA was about 75, 76, and UHC was in the low 50s. So, so I guess we are asking for board action on this to either, do something similar with the RX, whether you confirm moving on to finalist interviews and which proposers you would accept as part of the finalist interviews. And if you need us to, we can go back to the prior slides with the scores, but we are asking for some sort of board action on this now.
So this is Siobhan. If you want to go to the previous slide so I can make the motion. So I will make the motion that actually Emery articulated, which is we go to finalist interviews. This would be for the top 6 listed here, MODA and Providence, and 7 and 8 proposers, United Healthcare, where there's a natural break, would not proceed to the finalist interview. So that is the motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion carries. Thank you, board members.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that was the statewide proposal. So in the next section are the regional proposals. There are essentially there are proposals, and you can see the scores here. In terms of MODA, they did provide their proposal for this coordinated care model. Providence did that as well for Providence Choice. Kaiser proposed their Kaiser plan, as well as United Healthcare in this case. So this is the list of regional proposals. Not everybody proposed in the same locations. Actually, so this list, Kaiser proposed in essentially 2 regions. The regions that they currently serve, which are the I-5 corridor, as well as the metro, Portland metro area. The other 3 proposers, MODA, Providence, and UHC, proposed all across the state. So in terms of the proposals, there are essentially going to be, while Andrew showed that there were 6 different regions, technically that's still the case, but realistically there are really only 2 essentially regions that would be considered here. One is essentially, the I-5 corridor plus metro, and that's where all four proposers proposed. And then there's also the rest of the state, which would essentially Kaiser did not propose for. So it's all the other locations, not including the I-5 corridor, as well as the Portland Metro. You can see the points there on the right. Moda's currently has the highest points at about mid-70s, 75.6. Providence Choice is again about 72% percent of the points. Kaiser's at about 66, and United Healthcare's at 55.1. And so the board action on here is to essentially, again, to decide which proposers would essentially maybe moving on to the finalist interviews, or if you wanted the award right now, or essentially withdraw the RFP. The recommendation would be from staff and Mercer to move the top 5 proposers, which would then be Moda CCM Med only through Kaiser Medical RX, on to finalist interviews, and potentially not offer a finalist interview to United Healthcare's cornea care model.
And Emery,
So
I believe
ahead.
we do have some subsequent slides that break out those 2 different views if the board feels it's easier to look at them really quick.
Okay, let's do that. Next slide, please.
Next slide, I believe. Yes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's this
So
slide
as
and the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as mentioned earlier, it's essentially I-5 and Metro Corridor, which is on the following slide, but this slide is the rest of the state. And so you can see the proposers for the rest of the state and the points awarded. So it does, again, Moda's at 75.6, and then United Healthcare is at 55.1, with Providence about 72. So in this case, just concerning these regions, we are the recommendations to move the top 4 proposals for finalist interviews for this. So you can see the 4 regions listed below in that first bullet: Oregon Coast, Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and Central Oregon regions. And again, this is a coordinated care model, so that would be essentially those in currently serving those regions would be Providence Choice and Moda. So I'll pause there, see if you have any questions, comments, or if the board wants to take action.
Do you guys want to look at the I-5 corridor and metro region really quick, and then we can come back for the preliminary so you have a little more context?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, so the next slide shows the I-5 corridor and metro. And so this one is similar, except it has Kaiser, which proposed in those regions. And again, the points range from about 55.1 up to 75.6. The scores didn't vary based on each of those regions. It was one combined score. So you can see that with this regions in the I-5 corridor and metro, the breakout. And then the recommendation is for the board to move the top 5 into finalist interviews. And that's the recommendation from staff and Mercer. So so there's the 2 slides, and we can flip back and forth between those 2, but we are asking for board action.
I think we can do it in one motion, maybe. So like, can you go back to the original slide that kind of had the entire regional? Yeah, right. Yeah, that was it. This is it. No, wait. There's a slide that has
It's
recommendations
the next
on it.
one.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
This is the one. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we accept PEBB staff and Mercer recommendation To move the top 5 proposals forward to finalist interviews.
And I would add on to that, Sean, for all
Uh-huh.
the regions that those proposers offered in.
Good nuance. Yeah.
This is Siobhan. I will second that.
Board members, do you have any questions or want clarification, or are you prepared to vote on that combined proposal?
I can vote.
Hearing no questions, I will invite the board to vote as proposed by, as moved by Sean. All in favor of moving ahead as Sean proposed?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, board. As mentioned earlier, there's more detail in the appendix. I'm not sure we're going to go through it in this presentation, but there's definitely more detail in the appendix on the points, as well as some combination, just brief notes about where each proposer may have been better relative to the other proposers or worse relative to the other proposers. Siobhan.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know that going through this RFP process is an incredible amount of work. I want to appreciate my colleagues on the PEB board who did the initial scoring. That was a lot of work on your parts. And I know that we have a team of staff, folks at Mercer. I know folks who put forward proposals. It's also a lot of work, but I just want to say thank you to all of you who put so much time and energy into this. So thanks.
Thank you, Siobhan. I couldn't have said it better myself to articulate the amount of work, the gratitude that we on the board have for those of you who have done the work, both to tee up, design, and build out the RFP, and to our proposers too. A lot of work to submit proposals for this and to do these evaluations. So thank you for getting us to this point. What is the next step here? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
thank you.
Yeah, we want to return to
yeah,
step 5 and run through the decisions for confirmation. And then I will have a few comments at the very end to preview finalist interviews.
Okay.
Do we need a formal affirmation vote, or do we just need to chat about it for a second? So I'll just say I feel pretty comfortable with where we ended up landing here, as far as our board decisions up to this moment. Do we need to have a formal vote on that?
You know, we probably should for the confirmation, but why don't we go through just all the slides really quickly and have you do it at the very end?
Okay. Sounds good.
To confirm the preliminary actions and finalize them.
Yep. So Emery, if you want to start with 5 and just briefly recap their decision here and then walk through 6A through 6C.
Okay, sure. Okay, so the step 5 here is determining, or it's essentially revisiting, determining whether finalist interviews are warranted. And based on the conversation as well as the preliminary proposals, the answer is yes. Essentially number 2, that the board would like to select some finalists for finalist interviews. And so the first action there down below is to say whether the board believes we should move to finalist interviews. And I guess we will entertain motions to potentially hold finalist interviews.
I'm sorry, Emery. I think we can just
Oh,
confirm, okay,
okay.
the board preliminarily decided to move forward with finalist interviews. So now let's just recap the statewide and then the CCM decisions, and we'll just ask them to take one final vote on all that package,
Okay. All right.
including
So,
RX only. Sorry.
yeah, and so list all of the proposers that would potentially move on to finalist interviews. Okay. So, so for the RX only PPM proposers, recommendation was for the board to have all three PPMs go to finalist interviews, and that was preliminarily the decision made by the board. The next slide shows statewide, and the board preliminarily elected to have the top 6 in this case. So from MODA statewide med only to the province statewide med only plans move on to finalist interviews. And therefore, United Healthcare would not be invited to those interviews. And then for the regional CCMs for the Oregon Coast, Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and Central Oregon regions, the board's preliminary action was to essentially invite MODA to the finalist interviews, and but not United Healthcare. And in the final regions, I-5 corridor and Metro, the recommendation was to have MODA, CCM, Province, Choice, and Kaiser go into finalist interviews again with United Healthcare not invited to finalist interviews. And so that, I believe, was the recommendation and the preliminary selection by the board. So, Brian, is there anything else that's needed before?
No, we'll have
taking final action?
the board confirm that through one motion, and then we'll fast forward to the finalist interview slides, and I'll give a quick preview.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone on the board before we take this, before we consider a motion for this? Thank you. Do I have a motion?
This is Siobhan. I will make a motion that we confirm all of our preliminary motions as has been presented, which means we are proceeding to finalist interviews with all 3 pharmacy bidders, pharmacy benefit manager bidders. We are proceeding with MODA and Providence for the statewide PPO, and we are proceeding with MODA, Providence, and Kaiser for their appropriate regions. Did I capture it all?
Yes.
And this is Greg. I can second that. I think you did very well.
Thank you. Board members. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and go through the list and ask you to vote individually for this final action. Siobhan made the motion and Greg seconded. Cheeky Flowers, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Andrea Foltz?
Approve.
Thank you. Kimberly Hendricks?
I approve the motion.
Thank you. Sean Parkman?
I approve.
Thank you. Emily Wong?
I approve.
Thank you. And the board unanimously approves the recommendations as submitted. Thank you for all the work that has gone into this thus far. We look forward to additional information, deepening our understanding of how these proposers may be able to meet the needs of our PEB members across the state and, in fact, beyond. I do have one question about the other region, which I didn't hear mentioned very many times after the opening. I understand that border regions are included with the regional proposals, but we
Yes.
also have we have some employees at this point who live more remotely than that. And I wanted to ask into which, proposal those individuals' care falls.
Yeah, so Brian, please, correct me, provide additional detail. But it is, we the the RFP, while we discussed doing other locations outside of essentially Oregon and those border regions, the RFP did not actually formally, I think, formally accept bids for like essentially other states in this case. So unfortunately, I think it's still essentially status quo where maybe the statewide might be the only option. But that is definitely something worth exploring at some point to expand coverage outside, coordinated care coverage outside just essentially Oregon and the regions. Brian, is there something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, the setting up the regions and having a kind of quote unquote statewide processes for purposes of evaluation and ranking and selection. It doesn't limit PEB's ability to define service areas in the future otherwise. Generally, what I would expect is the statewide PPO is going to be the plan providing kind of the national and in some cases international coverage. Um, for those members who live on a border area in like Idaho or Washington or even California, some of that will depend on which regional plans we end up selecting as winners and whether their service areas go into those adjacent or contiguous areas.
Thank you for that. I understand that it's a small proportion of our employees, but my understanding is that it's growing, especially with the increasing prevalence of remote work. And so I appreciate that, just keeping that in our consideration as we move ahead with understanding how these proposers can deliver for our members. Thank you very much.
So if we move to the a few slides, I believe. Yep. I'll just give a quick preview. Over the next couple of weeks, PEB staff and Mercer staff will be working together to finalize the structure of the finalist interviews and the best and final offer process. And that will be the best and final offer process relates to us allowing selected finalists to improve some aspects of their financial proposal. We're also going to brainstorm and work a little bit on how we can consolidate some of the finalist interviews for those finalists who submitted multiple proposals. So that way we can have as efficient a process as possible. In early March, we'll be sending the finalist information and instructions on the interview process as well as the best and final offer process. We will be requiring them to submit their presentation material and best and final offer information in advance of the finalist interviews so we can do some vetting and also work with them on creating redacted copies that would be for public consumption. We're still planning on holding the finalist interviews the week of March 30th through April 3rd, and then we are currently scheduled to come back to you all April 29th for us to have the discussion about selecting winners and ultimately to select those winners. And so that does it for our presentation today. Again, we've included some additional details in the appendix as we previously mentioned. And I really want to just reiterate and echo Siobhan's words. I want to thank staff and board member evaluators up to this point for all the work you've put in. I want to thank the Mercer staff and PEB staff team who've been working on this, continuously for years now. And also, I think it's important to acknowledge all of the proposers who have submitted proposals, even those who may have been rejected or not made the finalist cut. I want to thank everyone for the time they put. And they're continuing to work with us on redacting all of this voluminous information so that we do have public-facing redacted copies upon request in the future. That's a lot of work. The proposal process in and of itself is a lot of work. The redaction process is a lot of work. And I would just like to encourage all proposers to continue to look for PEB opportunities, and we hope that you continue to be interested in those opportunities in the future.
Agreed. Thank you, Brian. Does this conclude the work of the RFP finalists consideration?
It does.
In
If there are
terms
no
of
questions, we are good and we got everything we needed from the board. Thank you.
We may be pretty efficient this morning. Are there any comments or questions, anything the board would like to bring up about that?
I should offer one last thanks to our advisory work group, who is Siobhan, Glenn, and Sharna, and they helped us streamline this presentation. I think left to our own devices, we could probably go on for a few hours. So I really appreciate all of your work to help us kind of really focus in on what we needed to touch on today.
Thank you. Well, given the efficiency of that work, the fact that we are ahead of schedule, why don't we go ahead and take our break now? It's 10:36. Let's go ahead and return at 10:50. And we'll get going again with the risk-based capital conversation. Thank you so much.
Hi, Rose. We might be doing the RBC presentation first, so that might be ahead, if you go back.
Go back?
Is this the first presentation? Is the RBC in here?
I don't know. What am I looking for?
Go the other way.
It would be a separate
Yeah,
document.
right here. Yeah,
Oh,
so keep
okay,
going up.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome back, board members. If you either come on camera or drop a note in the chat to let me know that you're back. I see Kimberly. Hello, Greg, Andrea. There's Emily. Hello. And Sean. Siobhan.
I am here.
Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to your PEB board meeting. And with quorum present, let's go ahead and get started. Emery, it looks like you're taking lead to talk to us about the risk-based capital and the reserve target update.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we're going to talk about essentially the stabilization fund, where PEB is in terms of the amount of money that's currently being held in reserves, as well as giving you a view of the actual experience over essentially the last through December of 2025. This is a presentation we go through essentially maybe twice a year. Sometimes we provide an interim update, but it's essentially to take a look at where PEB has been in terms of costs and where you might be over the next few years based on essentially market trends, or if you can keep costs to that 3.4% limitation. It does look at cost inflows versus outflows, cost versus funding, and the funding is again based on 3.4% or updated results from the prior renewal. So, but it's essentially just to give a look at whether there's what sort of changes unfortunately might need to be made in order to meet what's happening in the healthcare system. Okay, next slide, please. So again, risk-based capital, we've gone through this a few times, but in case you don't remember, it's essentially a proxy for how much risk. It's a formula that's created by the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. It is adapted a little bit from where they currently are. It was an older version, and there's been some updates, but we kind of kept the same formulas previously. But it's to essentially see how much risk, how much potential fluctuation is, possible for plans of your size, and kind of provides a cushion, a buffer, so that funding essentially is going to be enough funds to pay for claims. And so we are looking at various areas of risk. This one's basically underwriting risk, how accurate our projections are versus the cost coming in, and just ensuring that essentially the state doesn't run out of money to pay for, or PEB doesn't run out of money to pay for claims in this case. Okay, next slide, please. What causes claims to fluctuate? There's a few things there on the right. Trend, the population, essentially the risk or the types of members in PEB. Some legislation. We are in the middle of a legislative session, and so some of the legislation might impact what PEB needs to pay, or healthcare happens to healthcare, as well as large claims and random fluctuations here, and unfortunately pandemics with COVID-19, which actually did provide surpluses to PEB, which was not what we originally had planned, but did end up in the end. But in terms of risks here, there's a few different ones. Legislation obviously is going on right now, and as bills pass, potentially some of those might raise costs to PEB. And so those, are not anticipated, at least in our projections, unless they are for a future time period. But they could add costs or they may reduce costs to PEB. The population may change for PEB in times of hiring. Usually you get younger and lower cost members, but when there's less hiring, when jobs are tight, members tend to stay. People tend not to leave because they have healthcare coverage and they don't want to take on that uncertainty. And so your population might be getting older a little bit quicker than typical or more higher risk. And so those can cause costs to increase in this case. And that first one, trend, I'll talk a little bit about this more. Well, actually, I'll just talk about it now. So in terms of market trends, for Mercer, I've not changed the trend rates from the prior presentation. So it's still 6.5 for medical and 10 for RX, and then dental's 4 and vision's 3. One thing that we have heard from health plans is that trend is going up. And so what might consider to be typical market trends in the past, like 6, 7, 8%, might be approaching double digits. And so that is a concern that's happening. Again, we did not change the trend for this, but there is a concern that the costs, inflation, other things, healthcare, new drugs, just the impacts of things going on continue to rise and will impact overall costs. So that's something we will closely monitor. I think the experience actually for PEB in the second half of the year, as we'll show, has been better. So it's not has as much of an impact as it might have had for some other clients, other plans and insurance companies. But it is something of concern that we will be watching out for. And the other thing is, we talked about the RFP in the prior presentation. This is what we're showing going in this presentation is actually status quo. We are not assuming any changes to plan designs. We assume certain just updated claims, but we just kind of added trend to the medical. So the impacts of the RFP will be provided later, but it's not part of this presentation. Okay, we can move on to the next. So number one, these are some of the key results here. So as just mentioned, costs actually are moderated. They've kind of they didn't increase nearly as much as we were projecting. It's about a couple points, 2% lower than what we had projected before. So essentially, what we were anticipating as a deficit of 46 million in 2025 is now 16 million. So that is an improvement of about 30 million. We are talking close to $1.5 billion in total costs. So while 30 million is a lot, it is not quite as big as $1.5 billion. So that improvement in 2025 also flows through to 2026. So the projected deficit is 28 million, down from 51 million. For 2026, if you remember, PEB decided to essentially buy down a couple plans, or actually 3 plans, to make them low-cost plans, or to get to that 10% differential between that and statewide, as well as spending down some reserves to essentially meet that 3.4% limitation. So there was a deficit that was originally projected deficit. So that's not unexpected, but the deficit is down. It's a smaller deficit than what we had before. For 2027, again, based on status quo, so no impacts from the RFP, the projected deficit is $84 million based on market trend. Again, about 7% for medical in this case. You can see that number 4, stabilization fund, is above target for 2025. So you're okay there. But 2026 through 2029 is going to be below because of the buy downs and unless you make changes to meet that 3.4% limitation. Right now we're projecting funding to be lower than costs. And so that's going to buy down or make the stabilization fund keep decreasing. And you'll see it on some of the following charts. And then 2029, the fund balance becomes negative. So that's when essentially PEB would be running out of money. The prior presentation, I think 2028 was the time frame for negative fund balance. So that is an improvement, but that is still a potential situation without any changes to get costs down to that 3.4% limitation. And then one final note, we do assume a $9 million penalty was paid in 2025 from Senate Bill 1049. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure that actually happened. I don't know, Ollie, if you're on, if that penalty has happened yet.
It actually hasn't happened yet. We haven't received any notice. So, yeah.
Okay, but we have marked it down as an incurred expense in this case and reduced the 25 balance as a result for that right now. So you do have an extra 9 million just sitting in couch cushions. Okay, next slide. And please interrupt me if you have any questions. But next slide, please. Okay, thanks. So this shows 2025 through 2029 the fund balance and the reserve target. So the fund balance in that chart on the bottom left, the fund balance is going to be the purple line that's moving, unfortunately, downward. And then the reserve target based on the middle of the RBC target is that pink line that's kind of moving up, as well as the range between low and high. We do use claims through December 2025. We do have January 26 enrollment for 26 and beyond costs. As mentioned, that $9 million transfer. One thing we didn't update the 25 fund balance quite yet. Ending fund balance. We are using 24 ending fund balance with the updated projected deficit for 25 to show where the fund balance is. So based on updated information, that may change a little bit, but generally right now we're basically putting the ending fund balance right at where the target is for 2025. And then as you're buying down for 26, the fund balance does become just below the bottom of the range, but still kind of reasonable. And then you can see that delta begins to grow because the target continues to grow with trend. Costs continue to go up, and so the target needs to go up. And then, but the fund balance, without making changes to the outflows, makes the fund balance drop down. And 2029, it's negative. The numbers are actually in the appendix, but this is the general overview of the fund balance. Any questions or comments before we move on? Okay. Next slide. So just kind of taking a look at cost versus funding. This is a little different graphical representation of why that ending fund balance line is dropping. So you have the cost there on the left and then the funding there on the right. And we do have the percentage increases, the changes in each of those bars. But you can see for 2025, costs were a little bit higher than the funding, which is, again, to be expected because there was some buy down of the choice and MODA plans, regional plans, to make them low cost plans. And in 2026, more buy downs happening. So the projected cost increase is only 5.1%, but the funding's increasing 4.3, which is less than 5.1. And so that the delta between the cost and the funding grows a little bit. And you can see some of the bigger changes in 27, 28, and 29. So 27, this is kind of like a preview of what the next presentation is or what needs to be done. Again, no impacts of the RFP. But you can see without any changes from the status quo, costs are increasing about 7.2%. So that's essentially a trend increase over 26. But the funding is only increasing at 3.4%. And then 28 and 29. You can see the delta growing. Okay, next slide. This is the historical cost increases from 2019 to 2025. There's been some bigger increases there on the right-hand side in terms of the cost. But you can see over time, thanks to COVID, or I don't know if you want to say thanks to COVID, but with the COVID impact of COVID, and you can see that the cost decreased and then went up over time. And those percentages are actually, I think, off of one bar. Everything should be moved to the left one, but generally you can see that over the last 6 years or 7 years, costs have been increasing about 3.4%. But once you add 26 and 27, because costs are increasing 5 and then 7%, you are kind of moving above that 3.4% growth target, at least from 2019. Okay, next slide, please. This is essentially what would happen if you were able to meet the 3.4% limitation. One caveat or one note here, this does assume that PEB continues to buy down because of what happened before. Essentially, you're buying down for 2026, you're increasing costs, but you're continuing that buy down to meet it. And then so the ending fund balance decreases, but not nearly to the extent that was happening on the slide three ago. So while you can increase maybe potentially if costs increase by 3.4% in 27 over 26, it's you're meeting the increase in the cost, but you're still running at a deficit, and so the projected ending fund balance drops. If you kind of kept 3.4% from if you kind of met the funding and you were flat, you could see that purple line from 26 would kind of stay at that $275 million threshold, where you would still be below the reserve target, but not as much so. But that does require more cuts than just in cost increase of 3.4% over 2027. So there is definitely there's something there that the PEB board needs to consider. Hopefully the RFP is going to help you meet that 3.4% limitation, but in this, as trend keeps growing, if it does reach double digits and that impacts, that's what PEB sees, there's definitely a pretty big delta, some pretty big changes that need to be made in order to meet the funding coming in at 3.4%. Okay, next slide. Just some information on the data and assumptions. I don't think there's anything too new here. Updated information on the third, I don't know, chevron, I'm not sure what you would call it, trapezoid, on payments out the fund or payments into. The surcharges for tobacco, 6.5% of employees are currently paying this tobacco surcharge, and 21% of spouses waiving out coverage and paying a surcharge in this case. Okay, next slide. I think let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so after this, we do have the appendix because we are maybe running a little bit quicker. We'll just very quickly go through the appendix. Next slide. So this just shows the detailed numbers at market trend, so you can take a look at the costs in here. So for 26, at the top line, the projected cost about almost 1.5 billion. Next year's projected 1.6 billion. So it's a lot of so PEB's definitely growing. And then you can see the deficit and the delta between ending fund balance and target over time. Next slide shows what happens at 3.4%. And since there's a continual buy down, there are deficits happening in this case. And then next slide, I think kind of just shows the reserve targets, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So we have the 25 to 27 reserve targets. So you can see that by plan, and then 28 and 29 on the final slide. And with that, I think I will pause to see if there are any questions or comments. Holly?
Thanks for the report, Emery. Just to add a couple quick comments. When Department of Administrative Services, CFO's office, and Legislative Fiscal Office, they've asked recently, they're looking at funding for covering budget holes for this biennium. Actually, the picture's gotten better in the last couple of weeks, but in the past, they've looked at PEB sweeping some of the funds out of stabilization. As many of you are aware, there's obviously no funds to sweep in excess reserves. So we've reported that to them just recently. And we also have, as we spoke about at the retreat in November, potential legislative concepts for the next full legislative session. to bring some relief, different ways of meeting or testing the 3.4%, some different options. So just a reminder of that, that's still out there and active as it goes through the approval process. But I think that's it. Thanks, Emery.
Thanks. Greg, did you have a question or comment?
Just a comment. First of all, two of us were commissioned to the board yesterday. I was there for the hearing. And I spent all day yesterday in legislation, and I will tell you, every legislator, which probably a dozen and a half or more that I talked to, I made sure that they knew that the either legislator, Senate, or House, either one, I made sure that they knew that PEBB needed those funds and that they were not to take them from us. So I tried my best yesterday.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Any other comments before I turn it back over to the chair? Oh, Sean?
Can you just remind me, this is a little administrative, but in our reserve fund, it's actually literally a fund. It's not just a budget sheet. So there's actually a account somewhere, and the account gets interest. Can you just remind us what is that interest generally? And like that, I think, as I understand it, that just goes right back into the fund. I mean, that's part of the calculation, as I understand it. So, for example, the not pulling out the penalty of whatever it was, 9 million, was it? 9 million. That 9 million still gets interest. So it's like over some years, if they just continuously not take the penalty, like eventually the penalty will pay for itself, I guess. But anyway, yeah, just a reminder on that. Anyone that knows, Ollie, maybe you know.
Yeah, sure. I can comment on that, Sean. Yeah, the stabilization fund sits in the state treasury, and it's not something that the board has authority to invest. It really does just sit there and accumulate interest earnings, which were really paltry for many years. But in the last 3 or 4 years have been significant and have been really helpful in replenishing the cash reserves. And I don't, off the top of my head, have the number monthly, but I'll put that together and send you out what kind of last year looks like average.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's anywhere in the approximate range of 3.5 to 4%, hopefully, then if medical inflation is something like 8%, then it's like, well, in a manner of speaking, you kind of, hit it by half, sort of. It's not quite that literal, but
yeah.
But I assume, Emery, like you take that into consideration when you're calculating the deficits based on just kind of background radiation, if you will, like not decisions the boards are making per se, but it's just like if things just happen as they are continuously, this is what happens.
Yeah, so a couple things there. One, as we get the updated stabilization funds, that will have the interest in there, and so that gets kind of incorporated in. We are talking about a lot of money. We're talking, I think, Ollie, the stabilization fund has what, like $400 million in there right now, right? So that is a lot of money, and so we are talking, 1% is $4 million. That said, PEBB's spending out $1.5 billion a year. And so, and as accurate as I like to think I am, I'm not that accurate to like be within a few $1 million. I mean, that's like really, that's definitely within typical fluctuations. So we don't actually incorporate that interest until we get the updated balance. So it's just kind of like it's just more of a picture. And if interest goes up to like 10%, then maybe we will incorporate that. But as Ollie mentioned, it was pretty small before, like less than the percent or something like that. So it was just kind of coming out in the wash.
All right. Well, it might be worth looking at um, like hopefully it's more than 1%. But that would be
Oh, it is. Yeah.
that would be
It's
very sad.
significant. Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah.
3% growth. I mean, I know we're talking about the edges here, but 3% on $400 million that ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing it sort of continuously, right? And if you get up to something quite reasonable, such as 4%, which, some money markets, this sort of thing, I don't understand how the Treasury does their business, and I frankly sort of don't care. But if they're doing some of their work, which is, trying to squeeze the system, it's not unreasonable in some years to think maybe 4%. That ain't nothing on $400 million. So anyway, just throwing it out there for.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Emery. And with that, are there any questions or comments by board members? Hearing none. Thanks for those observations. We can move on to the next presentation. Marie and Andrew, Dental and Vision.
Well, okay. So we are running ahead of schedule, which is good. We had originally planned for, I think, 45 minutes for this presentation, but we've got a little bit of wiggle room. And so round one renewals, like you said, Dawn, we'll be focusing on dental and vision, as well as some of the ancillary coverages, which are renewing. I think if we want to jump to the next. Oh, actually, you're good. You're on the agenda. Apologies. Yeah, I'll just make a couple of comments here on the agenda to get you oriented. And so we'll do a very, very brief overview in the first section with regards to the approach for the 2027 renewal. We talked about this last month with the renewal primer, so just sort of hit on that quickly. We'll get an update from Emery on the financial roll-up and preliminary composite, which you got a little bit of a preview for in his RBC presentation, but we'll talk about that so you can understand where preliminary projections are coming in relative to 3.4%. We'll then switch gears. We'll talk about dental and vision in a little bit more detail than we typically have. So we'll go through some benchmarking. We'll look at some utilization, some member satisfaction, before getting into the actual proposed renewals in section 4. We'll look at dental and vision as well as some of the ancillary coverages, and then we'll talk about next steps. So if we want to proceed, please, Rose, to slide 4. Yeah, this one. And so you saw this last month. This is, again, just a reminder to get you oriented. We are not going to be talking about medical and pharmacy renewals in this meeting. We've put this pink box around the coverages that are renewing 1/1/27 with a couple of asterisks, which we've noted in pink for Unum LTC and Canopy EAP. And so again, today, really focusing on dental and vision, as well as ASI, Flex, and Benefit Health Solutions on the far right, supplemental programs. Next month, we'll have the standards round 1 renewal, so we'll incorporate that. We'll talk about life and disability, as well as round 2 for dental and vision. And we'll talk about Weight Watchers in March as well. The other slide that we wanted to orient you to, which speaks to our approach here for 2027, is around health equity and the focus areas, and sort of a snapshot in where we are with regards to evaluating some of these things. And so when we send out the carrier renewal letters, we send them a long list of questions for them to respond to, many of which are related to health equity. And so this is a little bit of a preview. This is a slide that attempts to bucket some of the focus areas, the equity focus areas, according to PEBB's health equity values, which are noted in those 4 blue boxes across the top. And so the bolded items in purple are potential topics to look into more closely with this renewal cycle. However, there's still a conversation that needs to happen with the Health Equity Committee to talk about these proposed focus areas and really sort of narrow the list to 1 or 3 topics. And so that meeting with the Health Equity Committee is happening later this month. And so this was our attempt to sort of let you know where we're at with regards to these efforts, but also to say there's more to come. The Health Equity Committee is going to review these and determine what their recommendation is for focus areas for this 2027 renewal cycle. So, I'll quickly go through some of the potential focus areas around engagement and outcomes stratified by REAL-D and SOGI data, looking at data collection methodologies, so alone or in combination, for example, strategies for rural access, requirements of cultural competency trainings within the vendor partners, and related to that, an NCQA health equity accreditation and sort of status as the carriers work on that. And so those are some potential focus areas again, but more to come once the Health Equity Committee has really sort of narrowed the focus. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I think Emery, I'll pass it back to you if you want to give us an update on the financial roll-up in the composite.
Oh, Emily, you have the question?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I just popped
no,
up.
I just popped it up. Not fast enough. Thank you so much for this review. I had a question about the Health Equity Committee meeting later this month and if I could potentially participate, specifically with my OHA role as lead on cultural competence continuing education program. We keep, we just completed our first external audit of OHA approved cultural competence continuing education trainings by the Oregon Board of Optometry. So we've never done that before, and there's 23 health boards that are impacted by this legislative mandate in Oregon, medical board, nurse board, dental board, home care worker board, emergency responder board, where people have to take cultural competence continuing education training, or what we learned from this external audit with the optometrists is if they don't take that training, they get a $600 civil penalty and they get their license suspended. And so, like, pretty high stakes for, and I'm learning. I'm learning as I go, and I think our equity and inclusion division is also learning as we go because, again, this was our first external audit that we completed successfully. But I had learned that when the title of the training on the certificate of completion isn't an exact match with the title of the training in our OHA approved registry of trainings, that's when that risk can happen for the provider. And so anyways, I would just love to share that more with maybe the Health Equity Committee, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I see Ali, you came off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I can definitely ask Sharna to reach out to you, Emily, and talk further about the opportunities to present to them and even take part on the committee.
That would be great because I'm seeing now that I'm getting more and more emails. So I just got one from California because some of our health providers, who are licensed to practice in Oregon are also licensed in California and other states. And they're wanting to learn more about our OHA approved trainings that their, California providers are also taking. So I think this is a good time. So thank you. I'll look forward to connecting with Sharna.
Yeah, thanks so much, Emily. Okay, any other comments on this slide before we proceed? Not, Emery, take it away.
Thank you. So let's move on. One more slide. Thanks. So this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the financials. And we're not showing the medical. Usually what we do is we show the medical plans here, obviously with RFP. We don't have like a true first look at the medical costs. And we gave you kind of an update based on the RBC where the plans were running a little bit better than where they had been previously. So that gives you a little bit of an update. But we have the dental plans here. You can see the top three, the Delta Dental or Delta Dental of Oregon, which is self-insured. And that one, we do have about a 3.3% increase, which actually matches the admin fee increase. And that's about $66 million in total premiums. We have Kaiser Dental. Their preliminary rate increase is 3.4%. There's about 11 million in projected premiums there. Willamette Dental Group is coming in at 9.5%, and so that's $16.6 million of premium. And as Andrew mentioned, there's going to be a lot more discussion about that coming up, but it gives you a little idea of where their initial rates are. For VSP Vision, the admin fee is being held flat. The claims for vision have been pretty good. I mean, they've been actually decreasing a little bit over time, most recent months. So right now we basically are saying holding the rates. So it's a very small decrease, about 12, but overall it's $12.5 million. And then we have some of the other spending accounts and administrative accounts there down below. ASI Flex is a rate hold, and that's about $500,000 based on what it was for 2025. BHS Benefit Health Solutions actually a 3% proposed increase. And that's a couple $100,000 for administration of COBRA and retiree premiums and claims, or not claims, but premiums, and just getting people enrolled and stuff like that. And then the bottom line there with Weight Watchers, we show that the capped annual cost is still about $1.4 million. But based on the admin fee, the actual fee itself, there's been the proposed 20% decrease from roughly about $40 per participant down to $32 per participant per month. So there has definitely been improvement there on the Weight Watchers. But we are showing the cap to be about 1.4 million. And then for these services, it's just over $100 million. Any comments or questions before we move on? Okay. So the top four benefits here, the dental and vision, actually flow into the next slide, which is a composite rate. So this is the initial look at the composite rate, and 2027's down there at the bottom. We do show 2020 and history from 2020 and down below with some of the changes. So 2027 there at the bottom, we're saying it's about $2,075, which is a 9.3% increase compared to where 2026 came in. One thing that's to note here, we did take out HEM, the HEM payments. HEM, as the board probably remembers, got rid of the HEM program. And so the $17.50 per employee per payments that went out to those who participate in HEM out, they weren't actually part of the official, I guess, composite rate. They were actually outflows out of the stabilization fund. And what we wanted to do was kind of give credit for that reduction because that was part of the funding or part of overall cost. And you essentially buy down to offset the payments that are going out in this case. So we did offset the composite rates here by that 11 million, but still based on the status quo information, in terms of some of that buy down that happened last year, as well as typical market trends. The cost we're projecting right now based on status quo, nothing with RFP, but is coming up about 9.3%. And as mentioned in the RBC presentation, you are about $85 million above that 3.4% limitation. So, there needs to, in order to meet that 3.4% limitation, there's potentially some changes that might need to be made to meet it. But I want to just kind of give you a preview, again, prior to RFP results, which hopefully will bring that down. But just want to give you a preliminary look at where you currently stand. Any comments or questions? Okay, if not, we can move on.
right, thanks, Emery. And so with this section, we're gonna get into dental and vision. The intent here is to provide a little bit more of a holistic view because time permits, because we're not focusing on medical and pharmacy within this presentation. And so we're going to show you how the PEBB plans compare to some industry peers. We're going to look at some dental and vision utilization, as well as sort of incorporate the member perspective by looking at some satisfaction survey results for all the dental and vision carriers. So starting here with this first benchmarking slide, this is a view into PEBB member contributions for the dental plans, which are the first 4 columns of this table, compared to 3 industry cuts that we are showing here for comparison purposes to try to give you a sense for how contributions compare between PEBB and the market. Contributions are collectively bargained, and so they're not really under the direct control of the board per se. However, if we think about how the plans compare from affordability perspective, contributions really need to be taken into account, and so it's good for understanding's sake to see how the PEBB plans compare. For this table, we've actually assumed 5% employee contributions for these dental plans. In reality, and that's sort of a worst case scenario because, as you all know, a lot of PEBB members pay 1% or 3% for their dental plans. But even under this sort of worst case scenario of 5%, you can see how favorable the PEBB contributions are compared to market. And so both on a dollar as well as a subsidy perspective, these plans are much more affordable in terms of paycheck deductions, how much is taken out of your paycheck to enroll in dental. And so the other big piece when we think about affordability, is member out of pocket related to going into the dentist. And so that really is controlled by the plan designs. And so if we want to proceed to the next slide, we'll start to talk about that a little bit as well. And this first plan design exhibit shows your dental deductibles and your annual maximum benefit, as well as the top row is those percent of plans that require a deductible, which for PEBB would be the MODA plans, so the PPO and the Premier plan. The Kaiser Dental Plan and the Willamette Dental Group Dental Plan do not have deductibles, which is pretty standard for more of a dental HMO plan design. And so starting with the deductible for MODA, we've colored those in yellow and we've indicated those are really sort of comparable to market at $50, $150 for an employee and family tier. However, when we look at the annual maximum in the bottom row, the MODA or Delta Dental annual maximums as well as Kaiser are a little bit below market. And so we have shaded those in red. And so this plan provision of an annual maximum for dental plan is really different than how it works with medical, right? I mean, this is the maximum that the plan is going to pay in a given year. And so that plan provision puts certain individuals in a difficult position if they have more major dental needs, if they have crowns or implants, that sort of thing. You can very quickly deplete your annual benefit maximum. And so this is a big part of affordability from a dental perspective, is understanding what that annual maximum benefit is. It is annual, so it resets every year. PEBS plans, preventive services don't count towards that annual maximum, so that's good, right? We want to encourage folks to go in, get their routine cleanings and not sort of penalize them from a plan design perspective. But nonetheless, you can see that those maximums are a little bit lower than the comparator peer groups. When we get a little bit further on this presentation, we'll talk about what the cost impact might be to bring that in line with market. But I would say if you consider affordability holistically and incorporate contributions, these are still very affordable dental plans. However, this one plan provision is a little bit under market. So if we want to jump to the next slide, we're still sticking on plan design, but now we're talking about ortho. And so orthodontic coverage varies quite a lot in the market. There are some plans that only consider children to be eligible for orthodontia services. Some plans it's children and adults. Some dental plans don't cover it at all. And so for the PEB plans, they all cover orthodontia for both children and adults. There is a lifetime maximum for Delta and Kaiser plans. We have that indicator for Willamette there, but that's not really how it works. For Willamette Dental Group, it's actually a copay. So you're paying a $2,500 copay, and there is no lifetime maximum for orthodontia services received. And so that is a very attractive feature for PEB members. Orthodontia coverage, the cost of it varies a lot based on individual circumstance and need and all that, but the costs typically far exceed $2,500. And so that is a really nice plan design provision. As you all know, not the entire PEB membership is eligible for Willamette. You really have to be within their service area, so it's not a perfect solution, but there is stepping back and looking at orthodontic coverage across all your carriers. There is good coverage. You are in line with the market, or in some instances more favorable than the market. I'm going to pause, see if anyone has comments or questions. All right, let's proceed to the next slide. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at some high-level utilization exhibits across each of your three carriers. And so I'll just get you oriented, and then you'll see that the format is consistent as we proceed through these utilization slides. So in this top bar, we're showing enrolled employees, allowed amount per employee per month, planned paid amount per employee per month, and services per 1,000. We're showing that in the current period in the top, the prior period in the middle bar, and then the trend from prior to current in the bottom bar. We also have this split by class 1, 2, and 3 in ortho. So class 1 are your sort of more basic services, preventive cleanings, routine dental exams. Class 2 is considered basic services, tooth extractions. I think root canals falls in class 2. Class 3 is really more major stuff. These are like your crowns and your implants and other major restorative services. And so with MODA, this is the most highly enrolled dental plan. And so you can see about 24,000 enrolled employees in the current period. If we look at how things are trending, so this is that bottom exhibit on this page. You can see some pretty modest changes in terms of enrollment and paid amounts. Services per 1,000 is up in the bottom right by 2.5%. However, if you look at it broken out by class type, it's really being driven by preventive services, which has an increase in utilization, whereas the other three categories have decreases. And so that's good. When we see preventive utilization similar to medical, that's a good thing. We want folks going in. Those are not high cost services. They're sort of table stakes for having good oral health. And it's an opportunity for the dentist or other provider to identify anything of concern. And so we like to see that utilization go up. Okay, if we want to proceed to the next slide, please. This is same data, or same format, I should say, but for the Kaiser dental plan. And so you can just give you a sense for the magnitude of enrollment. You've got about 7,000 employees enrolled in Kaiser. Similar to my comment on Willamette, you do have to be within the service area to be eligible for this plan. And so looking across the bottom, if we consider those trends, enrollment is up a little bit. Allowed amount and paid amount are both down, and services per 1,000 is down as well. In total, 3.5%. You can see the breakout by class type. The other comment I'll make is that Kaiser's not able to report on ortho, which is why you're seeing the NAs. It's not because ortho's not covered; it is covered, but they're not able to report on it in this format. And so when we think about utilization being down and try to make sense of that, I think there's a couple things at play there potentially. We have gotten some member complaints around challenges with scheduling an appointment. And so that is something that, we've been talking with Kaiser for, gosh, I don't know, many months now on sort of what's going on there and what improvements do they have on the roadmap and that sort of thing. And they are making several changes. And so they are, from a scheduling perspective, they're freeing up more 40-minute visits for members. So those who just need a cleaning, they're making more of those available, and they're also working on, they're appointing technology to allow for 6-month appointments to be made, which is not the case currently. And so if you're coming in twice a year, I know for myself, when I'm at the dentist, I make my next 6-month appointment right there as I'm leaving the dentist office. And that's not currently something that you can do as a Kaiser member enrolled in one of these PEB plans. But that is on the roadmap. And so a couple of improvements are in the hopper, and hopefully that'll alleviate some of that dissatisfaction around scheduling. Okay, let's jump to the next slide. We're going to look at Willamette Dental Group now. About 12,000 employees enrolled in Willamette. Generally speaking, the paid amounts and allowed amounts are lower compared to the other carriers, and that really has to do with their low-cost delivery model. And it is a big part of their value proposition in the market. And so they're able to manage their costs through their capitated proprietary clinic model. And they do currently have the lowest rate amongst the PEB dental plans. If we look at the bottom table here and see how things are trending from the prior period to the current period, you can see some big jumps from an allowed and planned paid per employee per month perspective, 11.8% in both of those columns. You can also see a utilization jump, 3.9%, in the breakout by service type there in the bottom right. And so, Emory mentioned this when he did the financial roll-up. The preliminary rate increase is coming out at 9.5%. And so we do have many questions out to Willamette Dental around what's driving some of these increases around the allowed and paid amount, as well as utilization increases. And so we'll have some more to come on that. We did inquire, is this perhaps due to a push in hiring? Are there more hygienists and dentists who've been brought on staff and that's driving utilization? It didn't seem like that was the case through their initial response. And so more to come on this topic, but yeah, so a little bit different than the prior two carriers, some similarities across the three, which we'll see here as we transition to the satisfaction survey results as well. We'll see some trends across the three, but before we do that, I'll pause and see if anyone has any comments or questions so far.
Hey, Andrew, I have a quick question. Did we increase the ortho within the last few years for any of the carriers? I thought we might have. And then the question is, did that drive utilization?
Yeah, I think we may have was it Kaiser? I don't know. I'm looking at my team here. Let us see if we can pull that up here while we'll pull up the year and what the change was, but it's a good observation, and you might be onto something there. So yeah, bear with us. We'll pull that up.
You
Yeah,
can
I'm gonna
also share it
proceed.
later too. That's fine.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll proceed to the satisfaction survey results, and then oh, thank you, Georgianne. Yes, Kaiser increased their maximum lifetime ortho benefit to $2,500 for the 2025 plan year.
Okay, but not Willamette then. That's helpful. Thanks.
No, not Willamette. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, just a reminder, that number for Willamette, it's actually the copay, right? So it's you get the full ortho benefit once you pay the copay in that case. So it doesn't quite work exactly the same as Kaiser does.
Yeah. Thank you. A little apples and oranges. Okay. All right. Each of the dental carriers, as well as Vision, in their contract, they are required to survey members based on their satisfaction with the plan. And so we wanted to bring in the member perspective into this. And so here on this first slide, we've got Delta and Kaiser, and we'll get to Willamette on the next slide. And so we just highlighted a couple of things in red just to sort of call your eye to them. And we're not really planning on going through these row by row. But you can see, starting with Delta on the left, there's really just the two scores from a member perspective that are lower than the high 80s or 90s. And the first is around access to dental care, 75%, and then the rating of the dental plan is 77%. And so the access piece, we know that this is one that we collectively have been hearing from members about across the dental carriers for some time now. We do have our 2026 CIOP Summer Research Group focus area on dental access. And so that'll be kicking off in like the May-June timeframe. And so we are going to have an opportunity to dive really deeply into that and sort of look deeper than the sort of surface level statistics of like how many providers do you have and what zip codes are they in, right? Which is important, right? But there's more to access than just that. Looking on the Kaiser side, a similar trend where if we look second row from the top, dental access composite of 79% versus all the other metrics are in the 90s. Sean, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. So on this point of survey data on access to dental care, do you have any sense if this is somewhat comparable relatively to other states, other clients? Like, is that fairly typical? It's like, yeah, it's between 80 and 70%. Or is there like special problem in Oregon with access, you know? It's like, yeah, uniquely difficult to get dental access in Oregon. Do you have a sense for this?
I have an anecdotal sense, and then I'd welcome others. But it seemed like it was during the pandemic when there was a labor shortage, especially for hygienists. And there was a lot of hygienists at that time who were actually leaving that field. And so I don't think that this access constraint is limited to Oregon. What I don't have a great sense for off the top of my head is how does Oregon compare to the other states with regards to this concern? I don't know that. And I do think that some of those sort of labor workforce challenges have started to resolve themselves. Now, here we are a couple of years out of the pandemic. But there continues to be this sort of lingering, member perception of access. And so it clearly hasn't completely resolved. But welcome thoughts from anyone else who might have them.
Yeah, I don't have a great sense of compared to other states. Oregon, at least on Medicaid, couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, implemented some directed payments to try to increase access to like help pay providers or give them like bonuses for increasing access, and just having that. So I know it's a concern on Medicaid as well, just being able to get members in. And so there's been some, I don't know off the top of my head the results of that, but that was definitely a target. But as to Andrew's point, yeah, I think during the pandemic, I think everyone was basically going, we can't get access, and people left. The hygienists left, and the amount of money that's needed to hire hygienists is like gone up. So that has been a concern, I think, that we've heard kind of universally in this case. But no specific stuff on Oregon versus Washington versus California off the top of my head. Sorry.
Might be a good thing to work into that SSRG, Sean. I think it might provide good context and perspective to understand how Oregon compares, and it might lead to some interesting solutions. Maybe other states have looked at something innovative that we can look at as well for Oregon. Okay, let's jump to the next slide and look at the satisfaction results per Willamette. And so if you These survey results are not exactly standardized across carriers, and so they all ask similar questions in slightly different ways. And so when we think about access from a Willamette perspective, if you look at the third row from the bottom, this is the one that really most closely approximates getting a member's perception on access. And it really has to do with, are you able to get an appointment in a timely manner? And so that is the row that generally is the lowest amongst all these questions that are being posed to members. Ortho actually is pretty high at 94%. But if you look at standard and new patients, it's in the 80s. And so similar to what we've seen with the other carriers and the results. Just doing some long intentional pauses to see if a hand comes up, but I'm not seeing one, so I think we can proceed. Talk about vision. And once we get through this section, we'll start to look at the actual proposed preliminary renewals. Okay, and so here are PEBB's vision plan designs. You can see the basic plan on the left, plus plan on the right. Vision plans are really about copays and allowances and frequency limits. And so again, kind of a different animal than dental or than medical. VSP, these are PPO plans essentially. And so we've color coded them in such a way, apologies if those colors kind of make you sick a little bit, but the yellow is where the PEB plans are similar to market, and green is where you are favorable to market. And so lots of colors going on, no red. So like to see that. There's not a glaring area where it's like, oh, the PEB plan really is below market in XYZ area, not the case. And so obviously on the right, the plus plan, which is your more rich plan design, has more green in it. And the fact that there's an option does give employees, that choice gives them the ability to really choose a plan that's right for them in terms of richness and corresponding contributions for each of these. We're not showing contributions for vision here, but I can just tell you that PEB's vision contributions are way above market. Most employer plans are, many of them don't subsidize vision at all, right? Like they will make it available to their employees, but they say, hey, you actually have to pay for the entire cost out of your paycheck. Some employers will subsidize it 50%. PEB subsidizes it 95 to 99%. And so the contributions are significantly richer than what you'd find working at a different non-state employer. We want to look at the next slide. We've got member satisfaction that VSP hires a third party to conduct these surveys. You can see generally they're very high. We're looking at high 90s for most of these. Second from the bottom is the only metric that's in the 80s. It has to do with selection of frames in your VSP network doctor's office that are fully covered by the allowance. 88% favorable is still pretty good. We talked about this a little bit when VSP presented, and I want to say November of 25, maybe October. We talked about this dynamic a little bit. We talked about the allowance and how VSP manages that and manages their network, and they do have some requirements from providers who participate in the network that X number of frames have to be fully covered under the plan allowance. However, that still leaves plenty of frames that are not fully covered by that allowance. As we talked about in that meeting, VSP does own a frame company as well. And so at some point, I think where we left off was some point in Q1 or Q2, we'd hear from VSP again and have that conversation again and sort of understand if there are any potential conflicts. But if you go back to the frame allowance on the prior slide, you can see that it's fairly high on the plus plan. It's a little bit, sorry, yeah, that slide, thank you. It's less on the basic plan. That's intentional, right? We're trying to provide two plans that have meaningful differences in terms of richness. But there is a relatively high frame allowance on the plus plan. You do get that $20 bump for VSP's sort of featured brands. So if you select one of their featured brands, that allowance actually goes up a little bit. So, but nonetheless, when we think about member satisfaction, that was the one item that sort of caught my eye. But again, 88% satisfaction is still fairly high. Any other reaction to that or comments or questions related to either plan design or member satisfaction? Something that you wish was a part of the plan that maybe isn't today, or if not, oh, sorry, Sean, yes, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just appreciate you bringing that up again. I think the main thing to dig into from my point of view is just around the frame allowance, potential conflicts of interest, like if they're both the seller and the buyer, and then, the price, I guess, looking into that, I look forward to that discussion and really taking a look like what is the average price of frames. And yeah, so anyway, look forward to that discussion later.
Thanks, Sean. Valerie, I see you have your hand up.
I was going to add that, we did go into further discussion of this during the client partnership review, and we're happy to go into more discussion around, frames and frame allowances, as far as, what is available to members and, what they have access to. These are privately owned practices, and we do not determine what frames the doctors, put in that is available to the members. And so, we're they get to choose the selections, the brands, the quantities. We do set that they need to have a percentage that are covered within our standard, which is that $150 allowance. But as far as, anything more there, that's kind of at each provider location's determination as far as, what they're going to stock. But we do make it to where members can search for providers based on selections for those featured frames so that they can get the most savings in value. And definitely always happy to go into that more offline.
Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate that context. All right. So I think we're ready to proceed and talk about the preliminary renewals. And so Emily Rodman on the Mercer team is going to take us through these next couple of slides.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Andrew. So this slide, kind of same format as last year, shows you a quick overview of the cost increase and the preliminary rate increase. Emery had gone over this earlier, but I can touch on it again. So in the left-hand box there, the green box is Delta Dental, and you can see that the status quo cost increase is at 3.3%. And their administrative fee, actually, they're proposing an increase from the current admin fee of $702 to increasing that to $725 for the 2027 plan year. And they have a few plan changes listed, more than we could fit on this slide. So after we go over Kaiser and Willamette, we'll go through all of those in more detail. So then moving on to the blue box is Kaiser. And as Emery mentioned, their status quo cost increase is 3.4. And so kind of touching on the same discussion that Andrew had around benchmarking and changing plans to meet industry standards, is this increased annual max for this plan change is for increasing the annual max benefit from the $1,750 to $2,000. And so this would kind of more align with what other industries are and get the plan up to that. That cost increase for making that change would be 1.25 or 140,000. And then moving over to the purple box there is Willamette Dental, and their cost increase, as mentioned before, is 9.5. And so the plan change that we have listed here is terming this office visit copay waiver for new patients effective December 31st, 2026. So just to refresh your memory, you may or may not know this program was put in place in 2022 in a partnership to address concerns with preventative care utilization and to encourage members to go in and get that preventative care. So we did get confirmation, just kind of like late breaking news. We weren't able to put it in the deck here, but they did confirm that with this change, they can lower the rate by 0.2%. So that would bring the preliminary rate down to 9.3%. And more to come on maybe what that might look like as far as impact on preventative care. They don't believe that it will impact it, but our round 2 renewal responses has some more information that we will go through. So I will pause if there are any questions on that before moving on to Delta's plan changes. Okay, next slide, please. All right, there's a lot here, so I'm just going to try and break them down line by line here. So the first one is, again, to increase the annual benefit maximum. As Andrew mentioned, it's a little bit below benchmark. So this would be increasing it from 1,750 to 2,000, and it would align with the richness of its industry peers. That increase would be a 3.6% increase on the PPO plan and a 4% increase on the Premier plan. And then the next one would be to also increase the ortho maximum from 1,800 to 2,000. And that would be a 0.7% increase on the PPO and a 0.6% increase on the Premier. And so then going down to these next few ones, so the first one is a change to cone beam x-rays. So cone beam x-rays are CT scans that are used for getting detailed views of the tooth or structures surrounding the treatment area for implants and root canals. And so it's a better way for providers to go in and get that really detailed image. And currently those are not covered. And so then this benefit would change them to being covered. And it would also align with the other Delta dental plans and industry standard, and would add an 1% increase. And we did check with Kaiser and Willamette on this one. And currently Kaiser does cover these and Willamette does not. And so then the next one is pulp capping. And so pulp capping is a benefit where when a provider is going to do a filling, they'll add like a medication or a layer, a base layer on the pulp in the tooth to hopefully help prevent, to stimulate healing and prevent the need for a root canal. So this treatment is performed at the same time that the restorative treatment is done, and should be included in the charge of the restoration, and is currently 2 separate charges right now. So providers are able to charge for the pulp capping and the restoration. And so this benefit would be to make that all one charge, and it would be included in the cost of the filling treatment or the restoration treatment. right. So then the next one is bone grafting. And so previously bone grafting was only allowed with if a dental consultant has reviewed the treatment or the case and determined that it met clinical criteria. And so bone grafting is used to when a member is going to get a implant. It's used to strengthen the bone or the jaw in preparation for that implant. And so now, instead of having these each go through clinical criteria and stopping to get reviewed by a dental consultant, this now is allowing this benefit to get covered once per tooth every 3 years without the need for dental consultant review. And this also aligns with the Delta dental plans. Okay, so then the next two down are kind of the same benefit change that I'll kind of cover at the same time. So the first one is re-cement or rebond of a crown or onlay or veneer. And then the next one is same thing, re-cement of an implant or abutment supported crown. So these are both a change to changing this to a once per lifetime benefit. And the thought behind this is that if an otherwise healthy tooth properly placed shouldn't need like a constant re-cementing to fix these. And so this change is really putting in place to promote clinically appropriate care for this treatment rather than these short-term fixes that aren't really resolving this like underlying problem. So again, this is to change this from being allowed once per 6 months to once per lifetime. Next slide. So these next three are administrative changes, not benefit changes. The first one is for the teledentistry, which is falls under Class 1 services. So this is just a call out that teledentistry was added to the Delta Dental Provider Network effective in January of this year. Teledentistry can be used for covered services that provides 24/7 access, and members can get consultation and prescription and referrals. The next one is just a clarification around language. Isn't a change to any current process. It's just a call out in the benefit booklet that a non-notarized attestation is a declaration and not an affidavit. And then the benefits and limitations, the next one down below, is to add language around a pulpotomy. And so again, this is done in conjunction with a root canal. And currently, this is they want to call out that it is one charge for that treatment. So if a provider is billing for a pulpotomy separate from a root canal, it is a provider write-off currently. So the member isn't getting charged separately, but this is just a call out in the booklet that that pulpotomy is done at the same time that a root canal is done, and it's one charge. And I apologize, I just realized I didn't go over cost impacts. So if you wouldn't mind going up one slide real quick. Yeah, so the only one that has a slight, besides the annual maximum and ortho maximum, which obviously have some cost impacts, the cone beam is a 1% impact, and then everything else is negligible with no impact. So thank you. We can go down 2 slides. Okay, so just touching on VSP. So there's a couple different options here. So VSP is currently in year 2 of a 4-year rate guarantee with the admin at $1.15. And as Emery mentioned, the status quo cost increase is actually decreasing of 0.1%. So there's a few plan options or considerations here, and I'll go through these. And just keep in mind that right now these are kind of bucketed as 2 options, but if there's interest in these, we can discuss more with VSP around like separating these and just doing one or the other. But let me first do option 1 here, which is on the basic plan, as we discussed the frame allowance earlier. The frame allowance currently is at $150, and this would be to increase it to $160. So currently that $150 covers about 25% of frames in full. And so increasing the frame allowance to $160 would increase that to 32% of all frames being covered in full for members. And then this is also included in this change is on the Plus plan, adding high index lenses with a $20 copay. So right now, high index lenses are the second most popular non-covered lens option enhancement that members are getting. And 31% of those members on the Plus plan are electing to get this high index lens. So adding it with a $20 copay would help those members. And so the cost impact of adding both those changes would be 4.4%. And then the next option down here is the same 2 options as I described above, but it's also changing the plan to using the choice network. And so currently PEBB is on the signature network plan, and then this choice network is a little bit, it's the difference between the signature and the choice network is that the signature network is just slightly a smaller network with at about 1% smaller. And so the way that works is that providers on that network get slightly lower fee reimbursements, and there are some discounts that members get for non-covered lenses, non-covered lens options. So they get like a, if you're on the signature network, you would get like 40% off of this lens option, versus if you're on the choice network, you only get 30% off. So so this would be a savings to PEBB to move from the signature network to choice network, but and that's because of the lower discounts and then the lower provider fees. But because of the slightly smaller network, there would be about a 0.08 disruption to members in a couple rural areas in Beaverton and Pendleton, where there's 2 locations that are the providers are signature network only. And so interestingly enough, oh yeah, Valerie.
Hello, I did want to mention that there is no access issue in Beaverton. There are plenty of providers that are on the Choice Network. There's just one provider that has one practice with a couple providers that there would be some disruption for your members that are going there currently, but they have plenty of other clinics to go to in Beaverton. Pendleton, there are clinics there in Pendleton as well, but this is the most popular practice in Pendleton that would not be on the Choice Network.
Thank you for that clarification, Valerie. Yeah, so those were the options. And as And as I discussed, if there's interest in doing one of these and not the other, that's definitely up for discussion, and we can bring that back for round 2 and get more information on cost impacts and savings on that as well. All right, next slide, please. So the last slide for me here is the supplemental program renewals. And on, these should go pretty quickly. ASI Flex is proposing no changes and no increase. So, and then Benefit Help Solution. And sorry, the ASI Flex is your FSA and commuter benefit program. And then Benefit Help Solution is the COBRA and retiree program. And they are adding a 3% rate increase due to, as Amory mentioned earlier, is just the normal administrative increases. So any question on the benefit changes or plan design changes that I presented? Emily?
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview and all the details. I actually had a couple follow-up questions about, is it slide 24? MODA plan adjustments and considerations, the re-cement or re-bond of a crown, that one, where it's changing from once every 6 months to once per lifetime.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I heard what you said about the reasoning for that change is to get people to do more quality work in the beginning or initially, but I'm just thinking like, because I've had, crowns and other people have crowns and sometimes things need to get fixed. And so is this change saying that their PEB benefits will only cover a fix one time per lifetime instead of one time per every 6 months?
So, I need to take this back because I believe that the benefit is that after 6 months, the current benefit is after 6 months of the placement that they can do a re-cementing. And yeah, this benefit would be to change that to once per lifetime. So yeah, the idea is in an otherwise healthy tooth or a properly placed restoration, it should not need more than once per lifetime.
Mhm. Okay, yeah. I just know, I mean, not for myself, but a lot of our members drink pop or drink fruit juices, and sometimes that wears on the enamel and all of that. So it just seems a little dramatic, the change from once per 6 months to once per lifetime. And then the other question I had was the preliminary vision VSP slide, plan adjustments and considerations, the option 2, choice network, and just that. Thank you, Valerie, for adding about Beaverton and Pendleton. But hearing from Valerie that Pendleton, that one of the providers that would be removed as if we switch from signature network to choice network, is the most popular practice in Pendleton. I just know in that area there's a lot of Native members. It's over by the Umatilla tribal community, and just so I would want to learn more about that proposal, option 2,
Okay,
from an equity
thanks.
perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, we can take that back. Thanks, Emily.
Mhm.
Andrea?
Yes, on the re-cementing, I want to say when I've gone to the dentist, they've told me with especially front teeth, those will not last a lifetime. They were lucky to last a year. So I think it really needs to be looked at. If they want to do a lifetime, then they should guarantee it for a lifetime. So you can go back and get that fixed. Because if that happened with me, I would be very upset because I do go in at least once a year, and they're just used to seeing me and they say, this is how it's going to be with these teeth. No matter what you eat or drink, the front teeth, they're gonna come off. So I really don't see how this is gonna work unless they're gonna guarantee their work. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
If I
Andrew?
may, Andrew. Sorry, Andrew, was it about that or were you going to speak to something else? You want to speak to that?
It was on that one, yeah. But if you go ahead, Don, if you have a comment on that.
No, Dr. Ahmed Farag, our state's oral health and dental director, happens to be on the call and may be able to speak to this if we'd like to call him in. Would you like to go before or after that, Andrew?
I think I'd like to go after.
All right. Dr. Farag, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. My name is Ahmed Farag. I'm he, him pronouns, and I'm the oral health and dental director here in the Medicaid division. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to listen to this. Couple comments on the re-cementation. When we do a crown, as a dentist, not that we don't guarantee it for a long time, but we assume the survivability of that crown in evidence-based dentistry anywhere between 15 to 20 years. So technically, once we put a crown, if it's done right, if it's done correct, if it's used appropriately, because there's still that factor, it should survive anywhere between 15 to 20 years. So I understand if we're saying, right, we don't cement it frequently, because that means it was not properly done from the get-go. However, my concern here is it's shifting the responsibility to the member, not the dentist. If it's a dentist error, the member is the one right now shouldering the responsibility. So I can see that they should not pay the dentist for that, but not really make it a restriction for the member. How to balance this out, it's a policy decision that they have to do, but that doesn't mean that the member should not get their crown cemented again if it was not done very appropriate in the first time. It's a dentist's responsibility, really. The second piece, and just because I'm speaking, I'll talk about the use. Unfortunately, when we put resin crowns, metal crowns, whatever type of crown, we still let the patient know their limitations, like how to be used, how not to be used. There are things that could break because of inappropriate use. And unfortunately, if that happens, now the member will need that to be re-cemented again with more education. We can't control the parafunctions. People parafunction all the time, like they move right and left, front and back, and all of this could trigger a crown to come off. So I see that it's shared responsibility, but the majority of the responsibility is really on the treating dentist, not the member. And the policy as written is shifting the responsibility completely to the member if the crown comes off in a year.
Thank you, Ahmed. Dr. Farag.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Frog. My comment was going to be similar around the shifting of responsibility. If there's an in-network dentist who is doing this re-cementing more often than is standard, that really is a network management issue more so than putting that on the member, right? Because the way that this policy is written is by the same dentist, and so now the member is going to have to go out and find another dentist. Maybe the cementing wasn't done properly. Maybe, like Dr. Frog said, there was some other reason they didn't, maintenance, what have you. So I was going to state as much. So thank you, Dr. Frog. You said it much more eloquently than I could.
Think so. Sean.
Sean?
Yeah, just sounds like we need a little more work on that particular policy. I think just on the level of policy, given the discussion just now, it seems like the policy would be more appropriate rather than saying for life. At the very least, having a base level policy that it's like for 15 years. Because that's, kind of the aspiration of how long, crowns last. And so like 15 to 20, so let's just say 15. Even a well done crown can reasonably break within that time frame, and it's also reasonable that there might be a state employee who is in state employment for 15 years, right? I mean, that's not out of the question. So it seems like that would be a more reasonable starting point for the policy, even from its own point of view of like trying to limit, um, these re-cementing. And then I totally agree with Andrew that if there's a provider that is needing to re-cement their own work a year or two later, that seems like a provider thing that we would want to look into, not a member thing. So, let's just talk about that.
Thanks, Sean. And then I will call out that there is a limitation on, if you need to get an implant, it's covered like once every 7 years. So there isn't an option to get, a new implant. So we're not, but yeah, we'll have more discussion around that one. So, Dr. Frog?
Apologies that I'm interjecting again just for 1 second. When you are looking at the policy, look also at the following topic, which is re-cementing a crown on an implant is allowed once every 12 months. While the bar functions on an implant are more aggressive, however, those are the easiest crowns to be fabricated flawlessly. So you don't really work with a natural tooth that you could have any geometry that you have to play with to make the crown accurate. This one is you set up accurate from the get-go. It's all manufactured pieces that fit together compared to your tooth and crown. So if you're really allowing it on an implant, I would say you're better off allowing it on a natural tooth than an implant. Like the implant could probably take a longer period for the crown to be repaired rather than a natural tooth. So this is where I see they have a little bit of disconnection in their decisions between what happens on a natural tooth and what happens on an implant. They allow this for 12 months. The other one is once per life. It really doesn't add up. Just from clinical evidence base, it doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think if we go down a couple more slides, I'll turn it back over to Andrew to discuss next steps.
Yeah. Thanks for that rich discussion. I know it's a little bit challenging whenever we look at these plan changes in round one, especially this year because of, everything happening with the RFP. It's really hard to understand where the composite's going to come in, and it changes month to month. So nonetheless, thank you. Yeah, appreciate those comments and observations. So if we could jump rows to slide, I don't know what number it is, the next step slide. If you could just do 2 more slides, please. There it is. Thank you. Just calling out a couple of key dates here. This time next month, again, we'll be talking about life and disability, as well as round 2 for dental and vision. Weight Watchers we'll start talking about this time next month as well. That is a program that the outcomes, the clinical outcomes of that program have been and are still being evaluated by the CIAO group. And so hopefully by this time next month, they will have a recommendation that they are ready to make to the broader board for you all to consider with regards to that renewal. April, we'll do it all again through our iterative renewal process. And we will have a one-off meeting on April 29th for the ASP selection with the RFP. And then when we get together in May, if all goes according to plan, we'll ask you all board members to make your final decisions related to the 2027 plan year across all benefits. Any questions on what to expect or things you'd like to see this time next month, or any other observations anyone wants to make? Greg.
Just one quick one. With collective health, we're still getting some very long phone waits. And we're still having some members contact, of course, me, on some of the alternative health. So if we could maybe get a rundown on where we're at in that, it would help for us to kind of give members kind of where we're at and what's going on. And when I mean alternative, we're looking at chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, those types of things. I've had a few members call and state that they're still not able to see their provider because they're not still back on the list or off the list. So, and wait times, some of the individuals have been, and like I said, I'm just taking people at face value, hours and some several hours wait time. So we'll see where we're at. I'm not sure, but like I said, I'm taking people at what they're telling me. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can follow up on the alt care network concerns piece. And then we do have ongoing calls with Providence and Collective Health regarding the wait times. And so that I can say that that's being actively worked as well. I see, Emily, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, actually, this is from earlier on with the minutes related to MODA. And I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. But I know with MODA, we talked about eliminating the nurse line. And I don't have my notes in front of me about that discussion, I think a few months ago. But I know we talked about that there was a duplication of service, and so it wasn't like completely eliminating a nurse line. You know, there was another way for members to get that. And then our family has actually just switched from Kaiser to MODA this year. And so one of my family members tried to use the nurse line for MODA. And we weren't able to find it. And then we also connected with MODA 360, the patient navigator group, and that person was also not able to find it. And so I understand there are different MODA packages, and for PEBB, that ours is MODA Synergy. So I just wanted to flag that and then ask for clarification about that. And, it could be offline.
Yeah, we can follow up offline. But your description is right. It was about redundancy and the fact that I think Cirrus MD is their third party that they use now. But we'll get some more detail around how they communicate that and look into the MODA 360 navigator piece as well, because I would think they'd be able to find that for you. So yeah, let's connect on that one.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Yep. Dawn, I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that work. And so I see that we have wrapped up the dental and vision renewal and plan benchmarking conversation. The next item on our agenda is other business and public comment. And Ali, I'd like to hand it over to you if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Dawn. We actually hope to bring Providence and Collective Health representatives back to report to the board on their progress addressing the many issues associated with this administrative transition, but we just didn't have quite enough time on the agenda given the RFP work, and as you can see, we're already pushing past 12:30, but I will say that things are progressing, not as rapidly as we'd hoped for, but rather than daily meetings with Providence Health Plan and Collective Health, triaging our various issues, we've moved to meeting about 2 to 3 times per week. So progress is being made slowly but surely, but still a long ways to go. I think Greg had mentioned, long wait times, and that's for both members and providers is a good example, but only one of many. So PEB staff did send an email out to PHP members last week. Basically, what we were trying to accomplish with that communication was just updating members on the transition and what we are doing as staff to address the problems, outlining their enrollment options so they're clear to them, and also offering a chance to provide public comment to the board. As you can see from your packet, there were dozens of members who took us up on that opportunity. We actually received some more over the weekend that we'll get ready and send out as well. But if you haven't already, please do read through those public comments. They cover a number of different issues, and not all are related to PHP and Collective Health, but we are reaching out to those members, and obviously we thank them for taking the time to submit public comment. Our next steps include, the board sent Providence a formal notice outlining a number of issues and requesting a date for addressing and fixing each issue. So as we evaluate that response and track their progress, we're currently working on next steps with DOJ and working with PEBB board leadership on the next step. So we should have a more formal update for the board the next week or two, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our staff for, just continued dedication to supporting our members who, are sometimes rightfully upset. PHP staff has actually been very responsive and jumping on problems as they occur. And, with claims payments starting, we're expecting that they're going to go well, and we'd be very disappointed if that's not the case. They've had time to understand, the problems of the transition and how to plan for that claims processing. So again, we'd be really disappointed if that doesn't go better. And I think that's it for now. You'll see those public comments as part of your board packet. Any questions? Go ahead, Siobhan.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. I just want to comment that the AbleNet employee resource group also invited me and a PEB staff person, Margaret, joined me, and we met with them. And I just want to underscore how incredibly challenging the transition has been to some of our members, and it's really impacted their health and the health of their families. I do think that shows up in the PEB comments. It just also shows up when we go and talk directly to the folks who are receiving benefits. And so the disruption in care for some folks really, really did hurt people's long-term health. I mean, we'll see what happens with some folks, but it's very challenging to quantify. So just want to underscore that, and yes, appreciate all the work, particularly of the PEB staff in terms of navigating, and just want to make sure we're centering our members and the lives of their dependents who are impacted. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Siobhan. Yeah. Go ahead, Andrea.
Two things kind of related. One, the Garner app. A lot of my constituents at the universities are not happy with having to, as you may have read, set up another account and use another app. So they're boycotting it. And so I just want to give you a heads up on that. The other one, which is completely different, I just had some of my AAUP union people come and they were asking me what the impact with the infertility, whatever's going on in the legislature. Glenn, maybe you know if that was something. Anyway, they were curious, so I thought I would bring that up to see if that was going to impact costs or whatnot.
Yeah, I can answer that. The bill that would have required coverage based on, well, infertility coverage, which is out of line currently with PEB and OEB. That bill actually, it made it to the Ways and Means Committee, but it also includes an exemption for PEB and OEB plans, so that won't affect us from a cost perspective.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Any other questions or comments? Right. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Sorry, I forgot. I had this question earlier. So, and I guess we'll have Collective Health speak to us maybe next meeting.
Yeah.
You know how we all got notice that we were assigned PCPs through Collective Health? I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it was telling you that here's your doctor.